welcome to Dow Talk. We have with us today Chase. He's the co-lead of the governance arm of the blockchain at USC club, and he's been very involved in DAOs. He's formerly a steward at Gitcoin. He is an optimism delegate, and he's going to teach us all about the world of college blockchain clubs and the increasingly important world that they play in governance. So, Chase, welcome to Dow Talk.
Thank you for having me.
All right, all right. So, just to get us started, why don't you tell us a little bit more about your background and kind of how you got into working in DAOs and governance?
All right, sure. Um, so I'm a student at USC, currently a sophomore at USC, studying computer science and business. Um, my experience mostly, uh, or most of my experience is like software engineering, software development, things like that. I've been coding for a while. And in high school, like found out about blockchain, Ethereum, that kind of sphere. And was very curious about it, like from a technology point of view. Kind of try to dive into like the underlying fundamentals of how proof of work worked and like from a protocol perspective, and all that was really interesting to me. Um, and then followed it on and off and tinkered with, certain things like smart contract development and also like uh, contributed to one of the one of the clients for Ethereum 2, the Prism clients, like tried to pick up an open issue on GitHub there to try and, do some development stuff. And then, was still like very technology driven, technology heavy. Like there's an ethos around crypto too that I appreciated, but like couldn't fully um put my finger on like what about it was so like interesting to me or felt so impactful. And then I think sometime around last summer, I started getting more into it. Like I was listening to the Green Pill podcast, and they talk a lot about coordination and things like that. Um, and so, slowly like my vision of like what makes Web3 and blockchain so impactful is like turned into more so like a technology for helping us coordinate at scale in ways that are better than we've been able to before. Um, and so, that type of thinking kind of got me really interested in DAOs and governance. And so now here we are. And then I got involved, um, looking for places to get involved in, like DAOs and things like that. Joined a bunch of Discords. Gitcoin was a really dope community and was attached to Green Pill, so I kind of explored there. Um, and then, signed up to be a steward at Gitcoin, which basically means was very active in forums and argued, put my opinion in forums a lot. Um, and then, yeah, and then this semester, we started our governance team at Blockchain at USC. Um, and we got delegated a significant amount of optimism token, and I got tapped to help co-lead that. And that's a look into where I am now.
That's awesome, man. That's like some really quality experience for just a sophomore. In college, like contributing to core protocol development, working on governance, working as a steward at Gitcoin. Um, you got to learn how to argue in forums early.
Yeah,
Is that on your resume now? Like when you apply for internships, like bullet point, argued a lot in forums.
absolutely, absolutely. Resume, like just a list of forum posts and comments that I've made.
So you said at first you were kind of most interested in crypto and Ethereum from a technological perspective,
hmm
and like the ethos side of it kind of came later. Like, what's that been like? I assume you kind of like vibed a little bit with the whole regen thing,
Yeah.
given that you got involved in like started listening to Green Pill, got involved in Gitcoin. So like, what's your take on the ethos now? Are you kind of like more like do you feel more strongly about more of the like philosophical, political, like moral, whatever side of crypto? Or are you still mostly interested in it from a technology perspective? Like how has that side of things evolved for you?
I'd say I've definitely shifted. Um, definitely shifted from technology to the ethos and philosophical, but also like I feel like when you say ethos or philosophical, it makes it sound, abstract and kind of fluffy. But like from a very practical perspective, like I think it's important, and I think we have the chance to really like build tools that shape how we coordinate, especially across the internet for the next like however many years. And so like I've shifted from viewing like blockchain as a cool technology to viewing that like human coordination as a cool problem that blockchain could potentially, be a solution to or part of a solution to. Um, and yeah, and there are tons of other like a lot of the ideas that got adopted by blockchain, like quadratic voting and etc., come from like an arm of people or like a community of people that kind of look at it the same way. You know what I'm saying? Look at blockchain and Web3 as a potential tool, but like the movement towards better human coordination as really the thing that's important.
Hell yeah. I love it. I love it. Well, would love to dig in a little bit more on your experience starting the kind of governance side of blockchain at USC. So, you said you're co-leading that. You kind of got that going, and now there's been this like opportunity to receive a lot of delegation of the OP
Right.
token. So like what originally got you interested in starting that and kind of focusing on governance within the blockchain at USC club, and then what was it like how did it kind of end up happening that you got OP token delegated to you, and what are you looking forward to going forward in that role?
Right. So I started at blockchain at USC. I started as research on the research committee. And so like governance, the intention of governance, when I started the research at the research committee, um, the research leads, they were like, we're working on getting OP and comp delegation, and part of your responsibility as being on the research team, like some of y'all will be able to contribute in, shaping proposals and being a delegate and et cetera, basically managing that governance side. And you know, at being a governance nerd, like you talk about it frequently, and so the other people in the club knew that was something that I was really interested in, and they knew that I was consistently showing up to the meetings and contributing to the club and etc. And so they asked if I wanted to lead our efforts in that when the OP delegation finally arrived, and I was like, absolutely, that sounds like a wonderful opportunity. Um, and so you know basically my thinking around that was doing it thoughtful and doing it correctly, you know what I'm saying? Trying to be very thoughtful about how we contribute to the space. Um, so we, focus on creating a mission statement and some values that we care about as far as how we interact as delegates. Really trying to get involved in the optimism ecosystem. We've been doing a lot of talking with both student clubs and professional delegates within the optimism ecosystem and outside of the optimism ecosystem to get a sense of what does it look like to be a delegate, what are some things that you have to think about, some things um to know, some best practices, etc., so that we can approach this from a very thoughtful point of view. um and also like looking within the optimism ecosystem and optimism governance, like where's somewhere that we can tangibly contribute something unique and valuable. Um, I think for some delegates, like everybody's view on what being a delegate is different. For us, like we really want to contribute something to the ecosystem, especially within governance, and push it forward as opposed to just like voting on proposals that come to us. Um, and so that's a lot of the work this semester has been building up that framework of how we're actually going to go about delegation.
That's a really smart way. That's a really smart way to approach things. I love that you're really, making a point to try to add value, right? Because it's really easy as a delegate to just be like, okay, well, This proposal, this proposal is created. I'm just gonna, read it for 2 seconds, then vote for or against. And that's probably, even a step above what you get out of some delegates who may or may not even vote on every proposal. But I think that's not really, I think the best delegates take it a step further than that and say, okay, what are the unique skills and experiences that I have or that my organization has, and how can I use that to identify, areas of opportunity or challenges that the protocol or the DAO is facing, and then support in that area. So I love that you're thinking about it that way and being very intentional. That's super bullish for optimism and for DAOs in general. I'm curious, do you have any early ideas about where you want to engage? Like, I assume maybe you're planning to be a little more involved, like in the forums and kind of proposal crafting, as opposed to primarily voting on sort of the execution and the on-chain governance stage. But would love to hear more like about, are there certain areas that you think you'll end up being able to focus on within Optimism, or is that still evolving?
I think it's definitely still evolving. The first one, so the first thing that we did, like the first kind of quote unquote contribution that we made is like a little write up about Bedrock, particularly summarizing. So for the Bedrock upgrade, for those that are not familiar, it's a massive protocol upgrade for Optimism. Um, it was worked on by OP Labs, and they're putting it out in a proposal for the community to decide whether or not they should proceed with it. And as of right now, it looks like it's going to pass like very, very, what's the word? Like 95% of people are for, if not more. Um, and so, you know, for something like that, like that's a hugely technical post. The people on our team currently like aren't the most technical, and even if we were, it's like there's some level of experience, like with protocol development and et cetera, that you have to really say, hey, I think like this small little detail in the protocol, whatever, that I think we should not do that. So for something like that, like where we thought we could add some type of values, perhaps within education, especially around things that should be known that are a little less known or maybe a little more confusing. So for the Bedrock update, there's like a 4 hour or up to 4 hour downtime in them actually having to upgrade that protocol. So we made like a little write-up summary on, for different stakeholders, kind of what that 4 hour downtime means for them. And I think like just in general, getting started as a delegate or just as a member of the community in general, trying to contribute, especially if you don't have like some type of background that's super specific or technical, like education is a great place to start. And so that's kind of the lens that we're taking. Um, but I think eventually too, like, I know I'm personally interested in, and other members of the team are personally interested in like governance and shaping like how governance might work for optimism in the future in a way that benefits the community and takes us towards community direction and smart like community engagement. Um, and I think that's somewhere that obviously if you do your research and you engage in governance practically and also think about ways that governance has been done before, both inside and outside of Web3, like that's somewhere that you can contribute as well, that we're interested in contributing. Especially since like optimism within their constitution makes a commitment towards uh, experimenting and iterating with their governance systems.
That's great. Yeah. I, like that's very wise. I think being able to look at a proposal like Bedrock, which, as you mentioned, is extremely technical, and say, okay, given the experience that our team has, where can we actually help with this? I think is a really wise way to approach it. And I think you're right. Like, even if you're not able to actually provide critical feedback on like specific, whatever like data compression algorithms and stuff like that. I think the gap in knowledge between even like what you all have as a team and what a general community member or token holder of OP token holder has is still probably pretty big. And there's like a lot of value that you can have there, because Even though a lot of community members might not have like as much voting power delegated to them as even you guys do in blockchain at USC. Like they still have the ability to vote or to redelegate their tokens to someone who I think is going to make a good decision about the Bedrock upgrade. And on some level, it's like kind of boring, but it's also incredibly scary. Like like this like proposal is going to change optimism forever, and the
Right.
OP stack forever. So I think every incremental step that can be made towards community education about what it means is a healthy thing for the DAO. So I that sounds like a great first step, and should put you on a great path forward in the optimism community. I'm super stoked to see the Bedrock proposal go live. Has it gone live already, or is it coming up in the next week or two? Do you know?
So the proposal is live. Voting for the proposal ends April 5th. And then the actual upgrade, um, I think like the timeline for the actual upgrade is still subject to the foundation and OP Labs. So once the proposal goes through, which it will probably pass, then OP Labs is and the foundation is sanctioned to go ahead and start implementing it. But the timeline for that, I don't know it. I'm also not sure if the timeline is actually out yet for when they're specifically going to run that upgrade.
Great. So yeah, so this podcast will probably come out a week from today, but for the listeners, it's Monday, April 3rd. So hopefully y'all are out there checking out the Bedrock proposal. I think I have some OP tokens, so I need to go check that out, and delegate or maybe vote on it myself. Cool, cool, cool. Well, that's awesome. Thanks for walking us through all that, Chase. We've been talking about your role as an optimism delegate, but you mentioned you also have done some work in the past as a Gitcoin steward, which sounds like another governance related role, but maybe a little bit different in the Gitcoin DAO. So, would love to hear a little bit more about what you worked on there.
Sure. So for Gitcoin, I was a steward, which sounds fancy, but really anybody can be a steward at Gitcoin DAO. Uh, for most of these DAOs, I feel like anybody can be a delegate slash steward. You put up your delegate commitment, steward commitment, and then you're in, and your role is kind of just to keep up with the governance side of things and keep up with the organization in general. Um, which is part of why like I was really interested in doing it is because I was interested in governance, but I was reading a lot about it, and it's like you can read about it or you can do it, and one is different than the other. And so I got involved there. Kind of got familiar with how their governance works, etc. Got more involved as within the community and in the forums, and kind of a bit a bit obsessively kept up with the forums and things like that. And then so like for season 17, basically Gitcoin works in seasons, and Gitcoin uses a compound fork, so similar to most DAOs, and I'm sure Tally is very familiar with this. They use that Governor Bravo, I believe it's called. Um, and so delegates, and which they call stewards, they get delegated token, and then they can vote on it, and that money gets transferred automatically if it's connected to some type of treasury smart contract that can send money, which Gitcoin is. And so for Gitcoin, every season they do these, large budgets for the work streams, and they ask some stewards to review them, and then they ask stewards to vote on them. And then if the proposal passes for the budget, then if the proposal passes, then that money gets transferred to that work stream's multi-sig um, through those smart contract systems. Um, which is nice because some DAOs aren't there yet. Some DAOs definitely are not there yet. For season 17, I signed up to help review the budget for the workstream DAO Ops, which is their like DAO operations arm. And season 17 was actually very interesting. Within Gitcoin DAO, like there'd been a lot of pressure, particularly from some pretty influential stewards, to cut back on spending for the DAO, because there seemed to not be a sustainable way of money coming in, but there was for sure money going out. And part of what makes like DAOs and things like that exciting is like you get an inside look into the organizational strategy and financial and whatever, and all of that is open to see. So if that's something you're interested in, like definitely check that out. But you know, these influential stewards particularly were giving their opinion, and other community members like concern about financial sustainability. And the kind of other side to that is like the way budgets are set up. There are these massive quarterly budgets, and it's like on or off, right? So you either say yes and the work stream gets funded, or you say no and the work stream doesn't get funded, but like there's not that much granularity. So when it comes to like saying, hey, we should perhaps not spend so much money, what I'm saying? You can say no, and then like a work stream is just like with all their contributors, they're just not getting money. um, and so like it's a bit hard to do that, which is why like those budget processes in some ways have kind of been considered more so a formality. They do a really good job of like fielding community input and adjusting, but as far as the actual voting goes, it's like if you look at past Gitcoin seasons within the DAO, like I don't think there are any examples, perhaps like very few examples of budgets like of voting no on a budget. Um, and so season 17, there were actually two work streams. They didn't get voted no on, but they got winded down due to like strong community sentiment, and strong token holder sentiment, that said that they would say no if this proposal went up for a vote. Um, and so like it was a really cool marker, regardless. I had some disagreements about some of them, but it was definitely a really cool marker of, okay, like this isn't just like this voting thing and community thing isn't just a formality. Like community sentiment and voter sentiment matters, and we can shape how this DAO runs in the future by controlling these financial levers. So that was a cool part of season 17 budget. But then also at the same time, like being a steward, like reviewing a budget, and also like being a college student, kind of pointing back to that thing of saying, of looking at something and saying, like my experience doesn't really align with being the most informed to say yes or no on something like this. Um, and so for the budget, a lot of what went through my head while I was doing it, like, I was asking, is there like some type of resource that you all have that I can look at where like I can use it as a model to say this is a good budget item, or this is like a good way to spend money and this isn't a good way to spend money? Um, you know what I'm saying? Because I don't really have financial expertise or budgeting expertise. But what I do have is like some community or a lot of community context and community expertise, um, within like Gitcoin. And so a lot of what I was thinking about then and kind of learnings from that, you know, if I were to construct it down and construct it such that what the stewards vote on is directly related to and only related to like that community context. Um, because that's what stewards are or delegates are supposed to be experts in, is contextually what's going on in the community. Um, and they might be experts in many different things as well, but that's something that they should all share. And so when it comes to voting on like things for the DAO, like I think it would potentially make more sense to vote on a like what the DAO should be doing, and then have an elected committee or something like that, like try to determine how much that should cost. Um, and so that was something that I took away from that particular experience.
Yeah, I think it's certainly an incredible experience for you as a college student to get so much exposure to governance and finance and how decisions are made by groups. It's hard. Like I remember, when I was in college, I'm like, old now, but not too long ago, I was in college. I went to like you know, also like a large school. I went to the University of North Carolina, just one letter
Nice.
different in the acronym, UNC, and like it's really hard to learn about that stuff, because there's kind of like a chicken and the egg problem where you don't have enough experience to like be able to contribute to some of these high level decisions, but then it's like, how do you get that experience, right, as a
Right.
college student? So I think that's really cool that you were able to break into that process a little bit by becoming really expert about some part of the Gitcoin community and kind of adding value to the overall like governance and budgeting process just based on that perspective. I think that's a really good lesson for folks who are not just college students, but anyone who's trying to break into a DAO. Like even though DAOs are theoretically more open than companies, you still want to be able to find a good match between your background and your experience and like what the DAO actually needs, so that you can, make a sustainable contribution going forward. And I think you are really smart and thoughtful about how you did that. And you're really touching on some of the biggest problems in governance, right? So you mentioned like it's very cool that Gitcoin kind of actually has this trustless execution process where when a season of funding kind of goes through, it's done in a trustless way where there's a decentralized vote, and then the funds are distributed, but it kind of gets voted on in this massive block, right? Where everything is tied in together, and there's like a pre-proposal process to decide what goes in there. But
Right.
there's still not really an ability for individual delegates to add a lot of like nuanced preference on how they think that money should be spent or which parts of it should go where. But there's sort of like a limit to the extent that you can do that, right? Like the opposite end of that would be like every dollar that gets spent by Gitcoin Gal goes through a formal governance proposal, which is
Right.
not really great either. And so I think as a community, like we're gonna figure out like what the right balance is there.
Right.
And it's very cool that you like had some experience kind of understanding what some of those trade-offs are and like where we need to figure out how to like continue to evolve as an ecosystem going forward.
Right. Yeah, and I definitely think like on that end, like when you find that middle ground of like how much granularity you should have in the actual specific governance, like smart contract code, you know, further levels of granularity, of course, like the social engagement piece is incredibly important. You can't take away like the human part of an organization. And I don't think you should try to take away the human part of an organization. And so like even though those Gitcoin season budgets were in like big blocks, um, you can say, you know what, this piece of the budget I think isn't really super necessary or whatever in a form, and the workstream lead can incorporate that in the revised budget and things like that.
Awesome. Well, I want to hear. So, like, you kind of had these experiences in Gitcoin. You're working on optimism now. Based on all the experiences you've had so far in DAO governance, what's like your hottest take? Like, what's an opinion you have about how DAO should work, that you feel strongly about, but maybe everyone doesn't agree with?
Um, so I would say I'll give two that I think are closely related. I don't think um I don't think governance tokens should have, in most cases, I don't think governance tokens should have utility um beyond governance. And I don't think um I don't think organizations should pay contributors in governance tokens. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't think DAOs shouldn't give governance tokens to contributors. I just don't think governance tokens should be payment for work.
That's awesome. That's a great spicy take. So, like, would love to unpack that a little bit. So, um, is it kind of like like it sounds like you kind of feel like the governance power should be like, or the governance power that is sort of like imbued in a token, and the holder base of governance tokens should be like completely and specifically focused on DAO governance. Um,
Yes.
Interesting. So have you put some thought? I can see why that would make sense, right? Because like if you look at big go- governance tokens today, Gitcoin's GTC, Uniswap's Uni, Optimism's OP, are now Arbitrum's ARB. There's a lot of different people who hold them for a lot of different reasons, and it's
Hmm.
probably just a subset of holders who are really focused on that governance use case. So I could see how that could generate some misalignment between like the token holder base that holds the governance tokens and what's actually happening on the governance side.
Hmm.
So I think I understand sort of like the opportunity slash problem, but I'm curious, like, have you put thought any thought at all into the solution? Like, you just kind of think maybe there should be like more tokens, or like should governance tokens be non-transferable? Because like the the market for governance tokens is kind of like permissionless, right? Like people can
Right.
buy and sell them, on the blockchain on their own. So curious if you put some thought into like what a different world would look like there.
Right. Um, so I mean, I'm gonna preface with I have more questions than answers. So all of this is like I don't know what the expression is, but it's straight from the brain, not an essay, not not necessarily researched
It's
opinion.
off the dome.
Off the
Chase, he's
dome.
going off the dome right now.
Um, first thing, I don't think like I think token like transferable token based governance systems in general, regardless of whether they have utility or not, um, are like rudimentary for a variety of reasons. And I don't think that's really that hot of a take. I think most people kind of see the writing on the wall where it's like, okay, we have these tokens that people can buy in order to govern the organization. That's shareholder trading, and we've seen that. And it's kind of like it's not necessarily the experiment that we're trying to create here. At least in my opinion, from my perspective of what we're trying to do with DAOs, it's like we're not trying to recreate corporations on the blockchain. Um, and so, that's like overarching pattern. Like I think um, we have to somehow move away from transferable token based governance, um, or at least like one token, one vote type, governance. Like there are different experiments with quadratic voting and et cetera, but somehow or another, like there are we need to create better mechanics that don't tend towards centralization. And through history and even through the short history of Web3, like transferable tokens do tend towards centralization um, when they're governance systems. That being said, if we are to use transferable tokens, um, I think that I think that like my initial kind of quote unquote solution would be to create a separate utility token, um, and use that. Like if you have a protocol and you want there to be some type of token that's useful for something within your protocol that can accrue value not only to token holders but also like the DAO as the primary token holder or something like that. Um, then like separating utility from governance could help with that misalignment in the sense that the utility token is that speculative asset. So if you're a trader, if you're a speculator, or you don't care about governance, like you buy into that utility token as that speculative asset, and you're allowed to engage in that aspect of some market based asset without creating some misalignment of incentives for the actual governance token. And then like you can almost give the governance token out, um, to people who kind of deserve it. So like as a reward for their contribution or et cetera, or if you have a contributor and you want to pay them in the utility token and you want to reward them with an equal amount of governance token, that's kind of how I view a potential solution to that initially. But I also think like, and I haven't super in depth explored this, but there also become issues when your governance token is transferable and the worth of your governance token is less than the overall value of the DAO, because then like, if your DAO has however many like $100 million worth of utility token in the treasury and your governance token is worth like a cent and it's just open on the market, then it becomes worthwhile for somebody to buy a lot of your governance token in order to take control of your utility token, which is again more questions than answers.
Yeah, I think to your point, most people who work in the DAO space would sort of agree that we're not necessarily aiming long term for like plutocracy, which is like a word that you could use to describe, the sort of state where there's like you can buy governance power and there's sort of like maybe a lot of governance power concentrated in relatively few hands. Um, but I think in fact, I would say like the biggest barrier towards sort of like innovation in like the governance token system is actually the last thing you hinted at, which is security. Having a transferable one token one vote system, in some ways it can lead to centralization, like we described, like maybe a lot of people can accrue a lot of the token. In other ways, though, it does provide some measure of Sybil resistance and also protection against like insider capture, because at least it's like transparent, how people can get to the token, and there's some
Right.
sort of a level playing field, right? There's a level playing field in the sense that anyone can buy the token. It's not level because not everyone has the same amount of money, and
Right.
maybe people's like contribution to governance isn't aligned with just like how much money they have or how much money they want to spend on the token, which is where like
Right.
the gap is that you're describing. But on the flip side, at least there is sort of like a transparent and clear and auditable way that governance power exists, right? And
Right.
like when you're building systems on Ethereum that are permissionless, like you described with Gitcoin, right? Like anyone can actually theoretically like create and pass a proposal. Having that like basic measure of Sybil resistance and transparency and auditability is actually key to avoid sort of like, yeah, like irrecoverable like catastrophic outcomes. So I think that I think we will see like innovation there, and I actually really like the path that you're kind of going down there in terms of trying to create like some sort of way to specifically reward contributors or to like focus the distribution of a governance token on governance specifically. But I think, some of the barriers there are actually like very, I don't know, technical in nature, or like there's some of the same challenges that we face with like adversarial crypto economic systems in general, where
Yeah.
it's like it sounds good, right? It sounds good to be like, oh, we're gonna
Yeah.
make the token non-transferable, but sometimes that can open up like security gaps or ways to
No,
attack the
absolutely.
protocol that we don't envision. So it'll be super interesting to see like what evolves there, over the next year. So if it's cool with you, let's move to our closing questions. I've already taken enough of your time. So I'm sure you have to like go back and study, or maybe maybe do some more research on the Bedrock proposal. So we have two closing questions. The first one's a two-parter, which is, what is your favorite part of working in like DAOs, governance, crypto, and then what's your least favorite part or something you think that we need to work on?
Favorite part, definitely. I'll say in DAOs. I think favorite part is one, like everything is open. So like that experience with Gitcoin where it's like there no other organization or no other space, at least in my opinion, will give you that amount of access to like the strategy of an organization that already has like millions of dollars of value. As just a nobody, basically. You know what I'm saying? Like not even an intern, like not even a contributor, like just, hey, can I contribute here? Um, and so that's really, really cool and really, really valuable, especially for somebody like me who's really interested in like organizational strategy and organizational culture and things like that. Um, and I'd say too, like the goal here is like very like lofty, at least in the very specific realm of crypto and DAOs that's like more region and people kind of care about human coordination and fixing, some type of some social issues that we think are created by these kind of worse systems and forms of coordination that we have currently. Like the goal is like global, you know what I'm saying? And so that's really cool to be a part of a space that's aiming for that type of impact positively. I'd say my least favorite part, um, like overall as a space, we have lofty goals. And then sometimes when you get down to the nitty gritty, like your DAO is a multi-sig or et cetera, and you plan on progressively decentralizing, but if we're being completely honest, like you've had the chance and you haven't taken it. So like I think there's a level of accountability that we need that we just don't have yet within the DAO space.
I love it. I love it. All right, last question. What is your favorite place in the world and why?
My favorite place in the world is, oh, I mean, this I'm gonna give a very boring one, which I think is true. Probably just it's not necessarily a place, but I'm very much a homebody in the sense that like I enjoy my house. Like if like I have a break, especially like school, like spring break, I stayed in my dorm. Like I didn't want to travel anywhere or do anything. I just wanted to relax and stay home and breathe, without having as many responsibilities or papers to write or tests to study for. My favorite place that I've been, like vacation wise, I'd say there's this beach uh, in Positano, Italy, I think, that I went with my family. Very beautiful. It's like the sand, there's like these tiny little smooth rocks, which sounds painful on your feet, but it's not. It's like I don't know how to describe it, but it was incredible.
That sounds amazing. Um, all right, Chase, it's been so great having you on Dow Talk. I love your ideas. I love your energy and your enthusiasm, and looking forward to seeing out you out there in the Dow space.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you for having me,
Cheers.
and shout out blockchain at USC.
All right, let's go. Cheers.